This is a video tutorial on how to use the bone analysis mapping capabilities to analyze the trabecular area of a bone. So let's start with this example. I've got a femoral head. This dataset is about 8 gigabytes, and I've made a ROI based on this structure, and I want to analyze this section of the femoral head using the bone analysis. This is for Dragonfly 4.1, where we have a workflow of 4 steps. The first 3 steps are to fill the bone, to separate the cortical and trabecular area, and to compute global measurements. So we can just skip these 3 steps and go immediately to the 4th step, the computation of scalar or vector fields. The algorithm mill is to compute the anisotropy, and will output a dataset and a vector field of the anisotropy computed based on the mill algorithm, the mean intercept length. And for this, we'll have to specify a grid where on each point we will compute this anisotropy value, where we would have the different stars that will be put at each grid center, and we'll compute the ellipsoid and the best fit ellipsoid at that place, and will give us the actual anisotropy for that point, and we will repeat this procedure on every step, on every point of the grid. We have as well this surface normal algorithm, which is also an anisotropy computation that will output a dataset and a vector field, but the technique is different. It is based on the faces, and so if we provide a ROI, it will compute the contour mesh as the first step in the area where we want to compute the anisotropy, and then we'll compute for each grid point. We'll have the faces that will be around, that will be taken, and the orientation of the faces will be accounted for, and we'll get an anisotropy based on these orientation of these faces. And so the parameters are very similar for the specification of the grid and the points where this will have to be provided. I will show this in a moment. And then different parameters will have to be specified for this specific algorithm. The third algorithm for mapping is a volume fraction. It is a scalar field, so it outputs only a data set. And again, we have to specify the grid where each point will be analyzed. And the volume fraction will be how many voxels are painted in my ROI divided by the total voxels in the area where the analysis should be done on this radius. So I will not talk about this volume fraction in this tutorial. I will only talk about the anisotropy computation. I will start with the mill, which is a very common technique of analysis of anisotropy. It is usually a global measurement that we find as well in this step 3, an anisotropy mill, and with the different parameters that are well accepted in the community, as well in image J. And we have to understand that this global parameter is giving a single number for a sample, and it takes different sample points, these max iterations. So we have in this case 2000 points that will be taken in the sample. But with this mapping for the mill, we take a single point and we take a star at that point. We compute the mill only at that point, and that provides the value of the anisotropy at that location, and we repeat that procedure for each point. So this is a bit different. So this algorithm provides a value of anisotropy for an area, but it's quite noisy. We will see that in a moment. So let's go through. For the bone, we need to provide a ROI. In my situation, I will provide this, and we need to specify the grid where this will be computed. So I will first start by having a box, and I will put that box around my area of interest. So let's put it this way. I'll take this and put it that way. You can look in the 3D view as well. So in my situation, I want to do it on the whole head. but you can do it as well for a much bigger section. Of course, it will take more time, it will take a bit more memory, but you can tweak the different parameters afterwards. So this is my box 11, and now for the spacing, this is an important value. It will determine the resolution of your grid. So my box in here is provided in millimeters. I will switch to millimeter. I think it will be more appropriate for what I want to do. So my box has 41 millimeters in the first direction, 51 millimeters, and 48 millimeters. So let's say I provide a spacing of 1 millimeter. It means in my grid, if I have this as the first direction, I'm not so sure, but let's say this is the first direction, 41 millimeters, it means I will have 41 or 42 points in that direction. In the other one, 51 millimeters, and here it means I will have 51, maybe 52 points, and in the third direction I will have 48. If I provide a value that is super dense as 1 micron, then I will have 1,000 points, a factor of 1,000 points here. So I will have 41,000 points in here and 51,000 points in the second direction and 48,000 points in the third direction. So it will provide me with a billion, a billion points more, and this will be probably too much for what I want to do. It will be super dense, and I will not have so much more information because this trabecular structure has a resolution of about they are separated about by 1 millimeter. So I don't want to go too dense. And by the way, this data set has a resolution of 50 microns if I go here. So I should not go too dense either. So let's say 1 millimeter per grid point. If you want to have a 3D grid, so to have these 41 by 51 by 48 points in the grid, so you should leave this box unchecked. But if you want to perform a 2D analysis, then you can check this box, and the dimension where the box has a smaller length will be considered as a single, will be taken with a single point, so it will provide a 2D grid. Usually we want to do that. Let's say I want to analyze a slab, so I will put my box this way, and I may have a very dense grid on these two other directions, but if I check this checkbox, then I will have a single line of points in here. So for 2D analysis is very good, and sometimes you can start with this to evaluate the parameters in here. It will be faster to compute, it will take less memory, and you can then evaluate what you need. So let's start with this, and then we'll go to 3D. So for the Mill algorithm, we need this sampling, the radius and the orientation for each point of the grid, creating a star, which is the basic of the Mill algorithm. We want, let's say, 5,000 lines, and on each line we will have 5 millimeter. I think it will be okay to have a good evaluation of the anisotropy. It requires a length of a few trabeculae, so usually 4 or 5, and having a trabeculae of about 1 millimeter spacing, so this should be fine. And sampling is the distance on a line of sampling to evaluate the entry and the output, or the in and out of a region. And so usually I like to have half of a voxel to make sure I determine, or I'm able to find the entrance and the exit of a line. So having a sampling of 50 microns, I will take half this, so 25 microns. Let's compute that. And so by remembering that this is a 2D map, it should be quite fast. And you see I'm performing with 11 CPUs. If I go in preferences, miscellaneous, I've limited to 11 CPUs. And it took just a few seconds in that case, and my memory was not so much elevated. And the output of this, so the anisotropy into the, I will look in there, put it in jet. So it's quite noisy, we don't see a lot, and it has a tendency to overestimate the anisotropy in my opinion. So it's not very easy to look at. Let's see in 3D in jet as well. Let's put it in the same orientation as on the right side. Take off the box, take off the ROI. So it doesn't provide a lot of beautiful information, if I'm able to see it this way. For the orientation with the vector field, you may take off this arrow head, since we compute an orientation and it doesn't have an up or down. It's an orientation, it's not a vector. And color it by direction is interesting. We'll see it better with the surface normal algorithm. But you can play a bit with these parameters to find a good visualization. But we can still see an orientation that is radial a bit. But again, we'll have a much better visualization with the surface normal. Before I go there, okay, I will just put that off. I will perform the 3D analysis just for comparison. So I will take it a bit out here. I will take it off so that I compute the 3D. And let's do it again. I will bring that up. 18 gigabyte. Computation started. So you see there is not so much memory. I took 5 gigabytes memory for that whole portion. It's not very long. Memory usage should remain stable. So I'll just make a pause for now, and I'll come back just before the end. So it should take about 3 minutes. So just for now, it has been a minute since I've paused recording. This remaining time has increased a bit. At the beginning, the first point of evaluation were on the side of the box. There was nothing to be evaluated really, since the ROI was very far, and so the anisotropy computation returned very fast. So that's why the first percentages were very fast, and then this progress kind of slowed down. But we are about 1% done in about 3 seconds. So let's wait a bit. The last steps are a bit faster. And so you see memory has remained about the same usage. Okay. Second part, this one is quite fast. Okay, so now these two values has been produced. Sorry. So put that down. So I will hide the box. The anisotropy mapping is now computed in 3D. I will put it in jet. So it's not very possible to look at just like this. I will use the clip. So to get approximately the same result I had in 2D, by the way. So if I just do this, so I should obtain the same result since the points were about the same. And then in here I will put it in the same color map, jet as well. So it's still very noisy, a bit over-evaluated. And the vector field as well, you can clip. But we don't see much of the structure, a bit with this orientation, but again, let's try with the surface normal. Okay, so this is mil 3D, mil 3D, mil 2D, mil 2D. My box is still in 3D. I will put it in a bit thinner. I'll compute the 2D mapping first to see the aspect of the result. Okay, I will hide this, bringing back this, and I will go to surface normal. So the bone can be specified with the raw. Usually that's what you will do. But just let's say that as well, if you have a mesh that is produced by some other way, you can as well specify the bone structure as the mesh for this algorithm of surface normals. As when you provide a raw, it computes first the contour mesh. So the sampling area box is the same. For surface normal spacing, I'll suggest the same, 1 millimeter, the distance of the trabeculae, and I will compute in 2D. For the radius of influence, you will go with about 1.5 distance of the trabeculae. We have found that is quite a good value. It doesn't have to be higher than that, really, unless you want to smooth your result a lot. But 1.5 produce a great value, a great resolution, in the sense that it is punctual enough to catch the local anisotropy. 1.5. So for this surface normal, you have to provide an algorithm for the evaluation of the anisotropy. It is either projection based or eigenvalue based. One is more surfacic, the other one more volumic. We have some it's toward the end of the algorithm, when you have all your vectors taken from the normals of the faces, how is the end anisotropy evaluated. It doesn't change the orientation evaluation, it just changed the value of the anisotropy. One is more surfacic, the other one is more volumic. So let's go with projection base. What I explained a bit earlier about producing a mesh from the ROI, it means that if you have your ROI here, basically it is a set of voxels. It is discretized, and so when we create the mesh, it will be discretized as well from the cubic mesh. And if you don't want to have only faces with normal oriented along X or along Y or 45 degrees, then this smoothing becomes important. And we recommend at least one smoothing, maybe a bit more if you can. It takes a bit more time to compute, but your result will be a bit more precise or reliable. especially for faces that are not perpendicular to the X or the Y, or at 45 degrees. So when you go between these angles, this smoothing becomes very important. So let's look with that. Again, it will be Ignite Task Manager. So CPU runs high, memory was not increased by a lot, at least for this first step. This is computing the margin cube, the mesh. Then it will have to smooth a bit. Okay, computing an isotropy. It was not very long because I didn't had so many points. I had, you see, 2000 vertices, about 40 by 50. Okay, so this one I will put it down, and we'll look at my results. Bring that in, and in jet. So you can see an interesting effect in here. The growth plate was not so visible. Maybe I didn't have the proper place. But let's look at the vector field. Put it in the same orientation, taking this color by orientation, and we'll put it a bit longer. See, the orientation is much more cleaner than with the mill algorithm. You see these well-oriented, not fibers, but trabeculae, and this brings a very interesting analysis. How this bone has grown. I can put it a bit more finer, maybe having this spacing maybe with 0.5 millimeter. I will have twice as much points in each direction. And by the way, if you do this analysis on the full bone slice, so if I would do this and this, let's take it this way. So I can compute that as well for now and see how it does. And if you would like to compute that in 3D, you would get the same idea as with the mill, what I explained. And you can clip and explore how this vector field shows the main orientation of the trabeculae. So it's performing the same steps. I will not go into the details of how to interpret these fields, but this tool is made so that the anisotropy is evaluated locally, and we have found it is an intrinsic, it is a property that is local in the bone. At some places the bone is disrupted, we have the growth plate, and there are some locations where the orientation is very much aligned with the structure. At some other place it goes radial. So it's very interesting to look at this mapping, and I hope this will bring much more understanding to this structure. So let's look at this, taking this down in here. In jet, you see in 2D you don't get this information in the other direction, but you can look in here, and in 3D, in jet, taking that off. Interestingly, you see there's a lot of anisotropy in here. There are some holes, you have the growth plate in here, and the vector field. vector field in 3D, boost the length a bit. Maybe with the sampling twice as large, maybe 0.5 millimeter, you would get a better result. But you see these lines. By the way, for the coloring, you may want to use this lookup table, and the color or the value of anisotropy is reflected on the color. So a higher value will be in yellow with this lookup table, and the lower value of anisotropy will be bluish. I can put it jet. I think it would be to be coherent with what I have on the right. So this is the value of this anisotropy. But if I color with the orientation, a red line will be completely aligned with the X direction. A green line will be completely aligned with the Y direction. And a blue line will be completely aligned with the Z direction. And intermediate colors. So the red component is dictated with the X value. The green component is based on the Y value, and the Z component, or the blue component, is based on the Z value of the orientation vector, or the orientation. You see this kind of crisscross orientation, these beautiful trabeculae here, and the growth plate, causing a bit of disruption here. So that's how you can use this bone analysis mapping with male and surface normals. And thank you for watching.